Hey Bowtie Nation, Joseph Hogue here with our Wednesday episode of Buy, Sell, or Hold, where I analyze 3 of the most popular stocks hitting the news, digging into the near-term momentum and the investor sentiment. I'll be feeding all this into our own Investor Momentum Index to give you a buy, sell, or hold decision, and the closest thing you can get to real trading analysis here on YouTube, without some Yahoo screaming stocks to the moon and showing their rented Lamborghini. This week we'll look at Robinhood Markets, ticker HOOD, writing a recent acquisition to a new all-time high, UnitedHealth, ticker UNH, a value play showing signs of a bounce, and Google parent Alphabet, ticker GOOG, with the courts deciding right now whether to break up the company. And let's get started with that $2 trillion giant Alphabet, with the shares down 2% over the last week, but on average volume around 26 million shares traded each day. So again, we're looking here for any momentum in the stock price, but also confirmed by big swings in volume, which we don't see that right here. The shares have underperformed the S&P 500 market index by about 11% this year, but have followed it pretty closely. That tells me investors are trading Alphabet, not on its own news, but on just that general market sentiment. And while the stock is down so far this year, and we'll see later not at a bad value, the Relative Strength Index, that RSI technical measure that shows us if a stock is near-term overbought or oversold, is right now here in the middle at 55. Remember, that's on a scale from 0 to 100, with 20 being oversold and ready to bounce, while 80 is overbought. A 55 again tells me that the stock doesn't have much conviction one way or the other. We have seen a strong pickup in mentions across Reddit and other social platforms, with Reddit mentions around Alphabet spiking 104% from the week before. That blow up here is around the court case being decided right now on whether the Department of Justice is going to try to break up the search giant. Alphabet has lost 2 court cases this year, with the verdicts that the company has used its monopoly in search and advertising. Closing arguments wrapped up last week to decide the punishment for one of those cases, the search case, and it didn't look good for Google. Barclays analyst Ross Sandler still thinks that pushing Alphabet to sell its Chrome browser and share search data is unlikely, but is a higher probability outcome now, and could hit the stock by 25 to 30%. But hell, if the government breaks up Google, maybe I'll finally get ads for something I actually want, like cheap whiskey and market sanity. But that is why investors are in that wait-and-see approach to Alphabet, waiting on the outcome to those court cases. But I think there's a way you can play this both ways. Looking at the valuation, we do see that shares are relatively cheap here, trading at 5.8 times on that price-to-sales basis, against an average closer to 6.6 times over the last year. So trading at an 11% discount to that longer-term average valuation. Now plugging all this into our Investor Momentum Index, which takes that price momentum, the volume, social media buzz, and valuation into account, shares of Alphabet get an index score of 67, which is right at the top end of the hold and almost into buy. Now that court case isn't expected to be decided until August, and with the stock trading here in value territory, I think you can buy shares here for a near-term bounce, and then change to an option straddle strategy in August. I know options can be confusing, but this strategy is perfect for this scenario where Alphabet could jump on relief or crash with that breakup verdict. So I'd be buying one call option and one put option right around where the stock is trading at the end of July. I'll be watching Alphabet closely and talking more about this strategy as we get closer to that August. So make sure you join the community by tapping that subscribe button so you don't miss it. We'll get to that buy, sell, or hold on shares of UNH and Robinhood next. But if you've ever wondered what's in my portfolio or just want to see the stocks I'm buying, you can now by joining me on the Blossom Social Investing app. This isn't just another app though. You can connect your brokerage accounts or just input your portfolio to track all your stocks in one place. You're going to see insights like portfolio percentages and average dividend yield across the entire group. You'll also be able to join more than 250,000 investors in the social feed to see what everyone is talking about. Now, I've shared my portfolio on the app and it's totally free to download, so look for the exclusive invite link I'll leave in the description below and check that out. UnitedHealth Group, ticker UNH, isn't one you usually see pop up in this investor forums, but this one has been getting a lot more attention lately. Shares have rebounded 3% in the past week, and on good volume, an average of 17.6 million shares have been traded daily against an average closer to 14 million shares over the last month, so that upward price movement is confirmed with stronger volume. Reddit mentions have popped 53% over the last week and exploded this year on both Reddit and StockTwits. Now, not all of that has been good. A lot of the mentions have been around the former CEO's pay package, around the death of a key executive, and just bitching about healthcare insurers in general. But as the man said, there's no such thing as bad publicity, and the news is definitely putting UNH on top of mind for investors. And with the steep drop on some legal cases and earnings, the Relative Strength Index has dropped to just 31, which isn't quite to that 20 oversold condition, but it's about as close as you get sometimes. We saw a blow up in volume on the downward crash, and this implies that sellers are a little exhausted here for the moment. We also see that steep drop in the price reflected here in valuation as well, with the shares trading for just 0.69 times on that price to sales basis. That is nearly half the 1.26 times average valuation it's traded at over the last year. Even a bounce back to this 1.19 times price to sales, combined with the 12% increase in revenue expected this year, would mean a 93% surge in the price. And against that pessimism of late, the crashing stock price, we have a new CEO who is actually an old CEO. Helmsley has served here as the chairman of the board of directors for 7 years, after leading the company as CEO for 10 years until 2017, so some hope here that he can right the ship again. Putting all this into our investor momentum index, the recent price momentum, investor sentiment, and technicals gives us a very strong 84, a buy signal on the shares. This is deep value and bouncing off some negative sentiment, so a good upside from here. I'm going to show you next why shares of Robinhood are up 43% in the last month alone. But what are we really talking about here? Stocks that'll make you rich, that will make you enough money to ditch your job and do whatever the hell you want. Well, then make sure you check out the video linked in the corner next, because I found 5 stocks that will do exactly that. 5 stocks that'll surpass your job. Robinhood Markets, ticker HOOD, has blown away the S&P 500 this year, up 82%, and 43% of that just in the last month, but slowing down lately. In fact, the 5% gain in the shares over the last week has only seen an average of 27 million shares traded daily, which is a steep drop from the average 45 million shares over the last month. So there is some real worry that buying interest is getting tired. This drop in participation. Robinhood is always a top stock by investor mentions and has gotten a boost over the last week, with Reddit mentions up 148% on some recent news I'll highlight next. The 3-month change has been more subdued though, but still positive, with the Reddit mentions up 11%, though sentiment on other sites has been flat or falling. On the technical side here, the RSI is flashing red here, with a 71 on the relative strength index. That does signal the stock is near-term overbought after that 43% run in the last month, would likely need some positive news to support it higher. The company may have found that news in its acquisition of Bitstamp, bringing in more than 50 global crypto licenses and an institutional client base that Robinhood has always severely lacked. This is a much bigger deal than the market has led on, and positions the platform to be a stronger competitor to Coinbase for those crypto services. Again though, it's going to need more news like that to support the shares from here, with the stock trading for a very expensive 18.9 times price to sales ratio. That is 66% more expensive than the average 11.4 times multiple it's traded at over the last year, and while the company is expected to grow sales by 22% this year, that valuation is still very rich. Plugging all this into our investor momentum index gives us a score of 47, which isn't quite in the sell zone yet, but is getting there, and I wouldn't hesitate to take some profits at this point. That Bitstamp acquisition is a positive in the crypto space and will help grow revenue, but I would expect shares to cool off over the next month or two. Join me on the Blossom Investing app to see the stocks I'm buying and what over 250,000 investors are talking about, free with the invite link in the description below. Don't forget to join the Let's Talk Money community by tapping that subscribe button and clicking the bell notification.